Hello, listeners. Thank you for joining me again on Leading with Integrity podcast. One of the skills that everyone has to develop, practice at some point in their career is the inevitable job application process, the job hunt. And with the Great Resignation, that's become an issue not just for job seekers, but also for potential employers. So my guest today is Fatima Mirza, career coaching and resume expert from Career Tuners. And she'll be sharing with us her insights in how you can write a good resume, how you can maximize your chances of getting the job you want for the salary that you want. And we're also going to talk about some of the great lessons learned about leadership management from running her business.
Welcome to the Leading with Integrity podcast. Leadership talk for the modern manager. With your host, David Hatch.
Let me start by saying, Fatima, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Excellent. And I'm going to do what I always do at the beginning. And sometimes it's a risk, sometimes it isn't. I'm going to hand over to the guest to introduce yourself. Tell us a bit about your background, your business, what do you get up to, and why you do what you do.
Absolutely. So my name is Fatima. I started Career Tuners in 2010 after helping several people identify that the way they were communicating themselves just wasn't really resonating with admissions committees or hiring committees or whoever they were really speaking to. So it started kind of on that side, and it really snowballed from there into a full-fledged business where we help people, with their application materials, whether that's your resume, cover letter, and LinkedIn, or we help you with interview prep, salary negotiation, helping you ask your boss for those high visibility projects, positioning you for promotions, asking your boss for promotions, and everything that can help a professional feel more fulfilled and better paid at their jobs. So that's been a really fun journey. I've met a lot of really interesting and very fascinating professionals on the way there, people who are really so just driven to do the best that they can do and make the world a better place, whether they're in healthcare or even in the business development space, working for these mission-driven organizations, really fulfilling, basically, making the world a better place through their work. And it's just, they say you are like the average of the 5 people you hang out with most. And I am so grateful to my clients that they are the best of the best, and that they try to be, and it helps me, try to aspire for the same thing.
Well, you're clearly very passionate about what you do as well. So you call yourself a certified resume master, which is not something I've heard of before. So I was going to ask, what is that and how do you become one?
Sure. So there's this organization called Career Directors International, and I haven't been renewing that certificate because I feel like beyond that certificate, I've done so much to keep my knowledge up to date. But there's like that base certificate, which is like the certified advanced resume writer. Once you get that, you can get the certified executive resume master, which basically is like the next level. And in order to keep making sure that my resume writing and all of the other services that I offer are up to speed and relevant to the market, I go beyond certifications to also serving recruiters. I have a database of 3,000 recruiters that I am serving every year to make sure that the best practices we follow are in line with their hiring needs. And this year, we actually, in addition to just serving recruiters, we started serving senior managers to talk about what they like to see in people that makes them promotion material. Why is it that some people seem to speed up their career paths so quickly and become directors by the age of 30, while some people it takes them until they're in their 60s to get to the executive board. And that's been really fun. We're actually putting our findings together right now. We do a lot of thought leadership in this space. So we really want to make sure that both sides of the table know what the other's motivations and needs are, and we can connect them better so that they both feel more empowered.
managing the expectations, I guess we might call it.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And so are there specific industries that you prefer working with? Do you have like a target client type, or is it just anyone?
I personally love working with marketing professionals because I can speak that language. It's something that I do on a daily basis. It's just a lot of fun for me to, see these people who do a lot of database decision making. So yes, I would definitely say marketing professionals are my favorite, although I do work with everyone else too.
Fair enough. There's a lot of aspects, isn't there, to the job hunt these days? It's not like probably last time I did it, where it's just put a CV in the post or in the email. I mean, now you've got to think about the cover letter side of it, the social media, making sure there's nothing in there that employers might not like to see. And then there's the whole kind of networking and people aspect of it as well. So how can candidates maximize their chances of success across all of these different avenues that now exist?
That's a really big and good question, because it's something that has so many moving parts that you really have to be aware of, which is very challenging. If you are someone who hasn't had to look for a job actively ever in your career, a lot of our clients are like that, where they've been recruited and they've been scouted for. So they're like, I don't know what to do now. And the last time I had to work on my resume was 20 years ago. That's, it's a very challenging and new game that you have to play, but I'll simplify it as much as I can. First, there's a heavy utilization of applicant tracking systems. These are basically like HR systems that catalog candidates and help recruiters kind of sort through people and rank people based on specific search criteria. So like when you go into Google, let's say I'm looking for a plumbing service, I would put in plumbing service near me, and Google would help me find websites that have this language in their on their page. It would help me find websites that have said that their location is close to mine. So it helps me rank through a bunch of information. So I'm not going down, like, let's say, the yellow pages in the United States and kind of calling business after business. Similarly, these applicant tracking systems help recruiters make their job sourcing process a lot faster and easier, where they don't have to look at your entire resume, because with the ease of applying online, a huge chunk of the applications that recruiters are receiving are not at all relevant to what they're looking for. So they have to be able to automate a big chunk of that. So making sure that your resume and your LinkedIn and your cover letter are optimized for these systems is critical. This means really bare bones formatting, like nothing, no heavy fonts or colors or anything fancy like that. Just very simple, making sure that the language used in your resume and LinkedIn mimic the jobs that you'd like to do. Kind of taking away anything that isn't strictly relevant to what you'd like to be doing next, and that sort of thing. So it sounds really complicated, but really it's the premise of it is very simple, is know who's going to be reading your materials, which in this case is the applicant tracking system, understand what they're looking for, which in this case is going to be what job titles you've had in the past and what language you're using to describe the roles that you did, and just speak to that and speak to the person who's going to be reading your resume, because you're going to have people that are like lay people that really don't know that much about the let's say the nitty gritty and technical aspects of your role. And you're also going to have decision makers that are. And so speaking to these three kinds of people, applicant tracking system isn't a person, but speaking to these three kinds of readers can help you make sure that your application gets ahead. And of course, beyond that, yes, you definitely want to make sure you have nothing stupid on your social media. I just saw a client that I had to have a tough conversation with, because she was posting these like little test your brain math quizzes on her LinkedIn, and then she was sharing her answers, but her answers were wrong. And I was like, I look, you're undermining yourself a little bit here. You got to not do that.
That's all.
So that was, it's one thing to share things that are not at all relevant to what you're looking for, but it's another thing to just go about them completely incorrectly. So you don't want to be, if you do share math quizzes, please check your math first, is the moral of the story there. And then, yes, in the United States, at least, applying to jobs via referral does give you a big edge, because it's expensive to post a job online. You have to post the job, you have to dedicate, your applicant tracking systems aren't cheap. Like, you have to, maybe they're paying per candidate, to kind of look at people's resumes. They have to pay that human resource professional to actually sit through and parse all those resumes. So it's cheaper and more effective for them to move people internally. And it also is a win-win situation, because people get bored in their roles and they want that transition. So that business is helping their team feel more, engaged and retaining them. And secondly, like, when you come in with a referral, even if you're not moving internally, like, even if, let's say, your spouse is referring you for a job, that adds a level of credibility, because often what these businesses are doing is, if you refer somebody, they'll give you like a $5,000 bonus, and you are not going to refer somebody because you don't want to risk losing that bonus. There's all kinds of strings attached to that. So you want to do your best to refer somebody that you think is going to be a great fit. All of this helps make the hiring process a lot easier for companies and, frankly, for job seekers, because if you can just leverage your connections, you get to surpass a lot of the headache that comes with applying online and waiting for emails to come into your inbox.
When I said about social media, I was thinking things like putting the wrong political article, maybe, or making some sort of faux pas around that, or the other classic, the stag versus hen do pictures on Facebook. That's come up a few times here. But getting incorrect maths answers, wow, that hadn't even occurred to me, because that's showing your incompetence as well as.
It was like a very specific way to mess up your social media that I had not seen yet in my 13 years of doing
well,
this.
hopefully you caught it in time anyway. Yeah.
We'll see.
That's the spirit. Yeah.
Posting about, your political affiliations doesn't necessarily have to be all that bad. Like, I had a client a couple years ago who was homosexual, and he was like, I'm so qualified. I go into these interviews and I feel like I'm wasting my time because they're obviously homophobic. And I'm like, look, you participate in the gay pride parade. Let's put that on your resume in the bio section. Let's weed out all of these people that, are going to discriminate against you. And like, why would you want to work with these people anyway? You're so qualified. You want to do your best. You don't want to be around people who have so much hatred for you, right? So that's one form of, I guess, political posting that makes complete sense, that is strategic to do. Other people, like, I've had clients who are Muslim and they cover their hair, and they're like, I'm considering removing my photo from my LinkedIn because my concern is that people are going to discriminate against me because of my religious beliefs. And I'm like, okay, well, when you go there and you start working there, like, they're going to discriminate against you, and, you're not going to be able to do your best either. So why not weed out people like that by being a little bit more authentic? Like, I'm not saying go and post like forcefully controversial things, but there are mission-driven organizations that are specifically looking for Muslims who cover their hair, or homosexual men who are very proud of who they are. So why not draw those people in? Because you are so accomplished, and any company would be lucky to have you. So don't waste your own time interviewing with people who are bigots.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of similarities in, and not to diminish it, but with marketing, as you say, I mean, it's you want to select out the people you don't want to work for as much as they want to select you out, right? So make it easier for everyone. Yeah, no, I really see the logic of that. Another trend, I guess, that I've maybe not so much lately, but certainly the last few years, you see it in the headlines a lot. It comes up in all walks of life, but professionally, most often comes up for job seekers. And that is this idea of ghosting. So you're partway through a process, the employer suddenly goes quiet on you and you never hear from them again. How would you advise a job seeker to deal with that if it happens to them?
Yeah, let's shine a light on this a little bit and make this process a little bit more transparent. When someone is posting a job, a lot of people have to come together to approve that hire, right? HR has to, I mean, depending on the size of the company, the bigger the company, more people have to kind of go through the approval process. So HR, your immediate manager, maybe the department leader. If you have a situation where one of them goes on leave, like maybe someone like that's, let's say they each get a month off. That's like 3 months out of the year potentially that their decision-making process is going to be stagnated for whatever reason. So that's a big issue that contributes to, you know, this perceived ghosting. Maybe you're not being ghosted, but there are some hiccups in their HR process that are not allowing them to, you know, coordinate completely and do proper contingency planning for like leaves and stuff. Speaking of contingency planning, another thing that can kind of mess up this communication flow between all the decision makers is if one person leaves the organization. As we know, it is becoming more and more common to work with an organization for about 2 to 5 years. So it's very likely that somebody who's responsible for bringing you on is going on, you know, is resigning or is leaving the job for whatever reason. So that's another issue that can happen. There are situations where people are just kind of bad at communicating and they don't want to deal with, you know, rejecting somebody after having seen their face and, okay, this is a human being and they need this job and they have a family and they have, you know, these personality quirks. Having to go and say, sorry, I don't want to work with you, it feels icky because it feels like you're rejecting who they are as a person. So a lot of people just don't have the guts to do that. But I feel that's less common than it just being a communication break. Maybe the right person didn't get the right reminder. Maybe they're not communicating together. So that's what's probably happening. So what do we do as job seekers in order to establish control over that process? First, we follow up, right? So if you've had an interview, I would follow up after 3 days and then I would follow up 2 weeks after that. And then I would assume that they are not interested. And I know that's harsh, but that's the reality of the situation where if you get emotionally attached to a job and you're continuously following up, you're like, oh no, that's the one that got away. Like, no, it's not. There's something better out there for you. There are so many jobs open that you should be applying to. You should never put all your eggs in one basket unless you get an offer that's been signed. I mean, even then they can decide like, you know what, just kidding. We realize we don't have the budget for this. And I mean, United States is in a lot of the states here are like at will states. Like they can let you go for whatever reason, and they don't really have to, you know. It's just not a fun situation. So do not have your eggs in one basket. Do not get emotionally attached to any one job. As charming as they might seem, as exciting as the opportunity might seem, I can guarantee you there is a better opportunity for you. And always be looking, because you never know when the rug is going to just get yanked from under your feet. So just follow up a maximum of 2 times and then move on. And really, you should have been applying in the meantime anyway, because let's say you are interviewing with your dream company and you're like, no, I really absolutely must have this job. If you get another offer that is paying, you know, a little bit higher, you can use that. You should keep entertaining that interview process, because you could take that offer and say, I'm also getting offers for like 20% higher. Is there any way you can match that? So you can get your dream job and you can be paid really well for it. So that's the advice that I would give to job seekers. Just understand that there are communication breaks that happen and that these HR systems are very inefficient, and to just keep your chin up and to keep at it with other opportunities.
All sounds like good advice. I'm just going to apologise to the listeners now because my neighbour has just started making some very loud noises. I think he's doing a bathroom or something. So if you do hear hammering, hopefully the noise cancellation will catch it. But that's what it is. It's not me banging on the desk or anything. Anyway.
Yes, that was great.
That's such a good answer, yes. Yeah. It was a good answer, but I don't get that enthusiastic. Anyway. So interesting point of view on ghosting though. I mean, is it as common as it used to be? Do you think it still happens that much, or is it starting to kind of drop off?
No, it still happens a lot, because these communication breaks, like, they're not going away anytime soon. You know, like, people do go on leaves and they do resign and they don't really plan properly. Like, this is just the reality of the world that we live in, and I don't think this is going to go away anytime soon. It's difficult to keep everyone in the loop at all times. As we know, you know, working professionally, we know that we have done this. Like, we have had situations where things have not been communicated properly and things have not been handed off. So this is just the unfortunate reality of the job search world. And I feel like it's it's not fun hearing that, but knowing this is empowering, because then you know not to take it personally, and then you can move on to something that's a little bit better for you anyway.
Yes, forewarned is forearmed, as they say. Other thing I was going to ask you about, and something else that's been in the headlines a lot, particularly the last year, is the Great Resignation. What kind of impact has that had on the job market from the point of view of the job seekers? I mean, apart from the obvious, is it just noise and headlines, or is it real from your point of view?
It's definitely been real, but some industries have been more impacted than others. And if you'd like to read about specifically what recruiters have been experiencing with the Great Resignation and how it's impacted how they negotiate with candidates, I actually surveyed a bunch of people and wrote a blog on my website. It's called Recruiters' Thoughts on the Great Resignation, or something like that. I feel like if you just Google career tuners and Great Resignation, that'll come up. So if that's something you're interested in reading more about, you can definitely check that out. But in summary, what that's done is it's made companies more cognizant of the fact that we require flexibility and, just the ability to work in the way that is suited to our unique personalities in order to be the most productive. Like, some people really want to come to the office and have brainstorming sessions with their colleagues, supporting those people and supporting the people who enjoy the flexibility of working from home and enjoying being able to decide what their hours are going to be, and kind of how do we cater to both kinds of people, so that they can collaborate? Or do we not? Do we say, no, we only want one or the other, so that they can have the synergy that's required to get the work done? And so just being aware of that there are people that need different things in order to be successful with their work. So that's one big impact. The second big impact is during that time period, which is to say 2021 to 2022, you could get away with negotiating and asking for a lot more. Like, typically, if you get an offer, you could ask for 10% more. But recruiters that I've spoken to have specifically said, no, we are seeing people asking for 25 to 30% more, and they're getting it. It's fine. Like, companies are finding that budget. I went to UCLA and I went to an alumni event like in 2022. And then there was this recruiter there who was like, yeah, these UCLA accounting students, they're coming into jobs and they're asking for $140,000 per year for their first jobs, and they're getting it. So I was like, I studied the wrong thing in college.
Wow.
No, that's not what I thought at all. But it was very nice to see that, people were generally had a more they were more empowered. So the end feedback that I would give to job seekers, the advice that I would give is, if you want a significant pay bump, find people who are making about that much money and figure out what qualifications they have, what soft skills they have, what are they doing specifically that you are not. And it's not polite to ask people like, hey, are you making this much money? But a good way to ask this, even in very conservative circles, is you could say something like, hey, I'm looking for a marketing director position, and like all of the positions that I'm interviewing with, they're offering me around, let's say, $140,000 per year. But I kind of feel like I could get away with asking for even $200,000 per year. Like, do you think that's totally unreasonable? Do you think that's totally out of the blue? And the answers that you might get, could range from, no, that's actually how much I'm making, to, no, I don't think so, because I know a friend who's making $230,000 per year, to, yeah, I think based on your skill set, that's a bit much. But if you want to do that, like, here are some of the credentials that you would need. So having that conversation with people who are doing the kind of work that you'd like to do is really important. And, if you don't have a circle really established, this is a question that you can ask a stranger on LinkedIn, and it wouldn't be like rude or out of the blue. You can have a conversation with someone. Like, you could find someone on LinkedIn that you admire. You can say, I really admire you. I wanted your advice on something related to interviews that I was going on, if it's okay. And if they message you back, yes, it's okay, please go on, which most people will. You can ask the question like, this is what I'm getting. I don't really like I did a bit of research online, and this is what I'm seeing, but I feel like the research I'm looking at might be outdated, because that's what happened in the Great Recession, right? Like things were moving so quickly that a lot of these like salary reports and stuff, like they couldn't really keep up, and you needed that first person research in order to know like what was really happening. And this is the way to go about that. Additionally, online research is going to be completely irrelevant if you are a director level candidate or higher, if you're a senior manager, and it's going to be completely irrelevant if you're in a brand new space. For example, when marijuana became legal in the United States, like we didn't know like what we should tell our clients. We're like, I don't know, it's a brand new field. We don't have like any benchmarks for this. So if that's what's happening to you, if you are the new marijuana industry, this is what you have to do. You guys have to talk to each other, and you have to see what's reasonable and what's realistic.
Yeah, it's good advice. Not sure you'd get many answers if you tried it on LinkedIn, to be honest, but you never know. I guess.
Surprised. We actually did this experiment where we purchased in-mail credits, and when people receive in-mails, it's almost guaranteed that they will reply, because first of all, it costs money. So when you receive one, you're like, wow, this person paid money to ask me a question. So there's that like built-in flattery, and the act of this person's paying money to ask me a question, so they must, I must answer, therefore I must like them. Like there's this whole kind of like psychology that's happening where they are more inclined to be helpful. And the other thing is, when you send someone an email, not only do they get the notification on LinkedIn, they get the entire, like at least a good chunk of the text, depending on the length of the message, in their inbox, in their primary inbox. So if someone isn't really checking LinkedIn, which is very common if you are primarily working with kind of like, you try to network with senior professionals, they're not going to be checking LinkedIn every day. They're going to be doing their jobs. But if you send them an email, it's going to get in their inbox. Additionally, if they don't reply, you get the credits back. So we did this experiment where we like messaged people on LinkedIn, and we complimented something about their what we saw on their profile, and we asked them a very simple question, like, what is a book that you would recommend if I wanted to get started in this space? Or do you think that the certification that you took was instrumental in, this transition that you had recently? Something very simple that doesn't require much thought process or like, any effort really to answer. And once we got that in, we would ask that bigger question, which is, do you recommend any recruiters in this space? Or, is that this kind of a sensitive question, but I feel like you would be the best person to ask this. Like, do you think a salary of blah, blah, blah is unreasonable for someone who's, offering whatever I have? And it's so simple to answer that with a yes or no. Like, you don't really have to think about it, as opposed to reaching out with an email and being like, are you guys hiring? That's a very difficult question to answer, because you have to look and you have to see who they are and what their qualifications are. Like there's so much work. Like it seems like a simple question, but it's really, really not. So this is what we found, and we saw like a 95% reply rate. So you guys, if you want to try it out, it is expensive. We had to pay $100 a month for that LinkedIn Premium subscription, but the return is so great. Like if it helps you find a job that pays like $50,000 per year more, like why not?
Yeah, it seems like a reasonable return on investment, doesn't it?
Yeah, I would say so.
That. Yeah.
It's not like Bitcoin levels of return.
Well, yeah, depending on what week it is, I suppose.
Did you ever have this fantasy where like, oh yeah, I'm going to travel back in time to 2008 and buy Bitcoin for like $300? I think about it all the time.
Yeah, or like the early 80s and buy Microsoft or...
Exactly.
Yeah, I think everyone has moments like that, don't they? Then I wouldn't have to do my day job. Yeah, that's a lie.
Or you would do it with no pressure. You would just go in and be like, "I'm just gonna do my best, and it doesn't matter." Yeah. I've not succumbed to that sort of fancy for a long time. I love what I do now, so there we go. Me too. But it would be nice to be a billionaire.
Well, yeah, I suppose. Yeah. I mean, if you believe...
I actually, personal philosophy, a little bit of a tangent here. I don't know. Like, I think that's excessive. Like, after a certain point, like, I don't know, there's so much I don't want to say poverty. Like I grew up in India, and going back home, you could give somebody $100 and it would be like a life-changing event for them. Like I was taking an auto rickshaw once from my grandma's house to my uncle's house, and I heard the guy talking on the phone, and he was like begging somebody that please just pretend he's one of your kids and just have him sit through the exam. And I talked to him after, and he was like, yeah, I need $75 for my son to take his college exams. Otherwise, like, he's not going to, at least $75 is a life-changing amount for him, And I'm like, what am I going to do with $1 billion? It just seems like excessive. Okay, rant over.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things, isn't it? Like everyone would like the money, but I don't think everyone would like the attention that inevitably goes with it, or the tax bill, or not that many of them probably pay the tax bill, to be fair.
Or the moral responsibility, if they have any moral compass.
Yeah, I'm not sure that really bothers them, does it?
No,
it probably would if it was someone like you or I, but I'm not sure the real billionaire. Maybe that's why they're billionaires, depressingly. Who knows?
Yeah. That's when you have to get rich after you hit 40, because then you're like, okay, I know what the struggle is, and then you can respect that money properly.
Yeah. I definitely, if it was gonna happen, I'd not want anyone to know about it, though. Definitely.
For sure.
Anyway, that's a potentially depressing trail of thought. So let's change the subject. Let's talk about cover letters.
Sure.
So quite often, that's the first thing that a recruiting manager is going to read, or first exposure they might have to you as a candidate. So with that in mind, it's the first impression, isn't it? So extremely important. How do you write a successful cover letter then?
I would actually argue that it's the second impression, because back in the day, like when you had a cover letter, it was a cover letter. Like it would cover your resume, you would staple them together, put them in an envelope, and mail it out. So the first piece of paper they're looking at is your cover letter. They're turning the page and then they see your resume. However, now it's different. Like I said, the applicant tracking system is first parsing through, and if your candidacy kind of makes sense with the search query, then a little blurb kind of summarizing, like, oh, this is Fatima, and she has, like, let's say 5 years of experience with this and with this platform, and then the recruiter's like, okay, that's kind of in line with what I'm looking for. Click through, read my resume. Okay, she attached a cover letter, and then like, wait, let's like, it's later in the process. It's so many steps I have to come together, because like I said earlier, a lot of people submit submit applications blindly. So a good 70 to 80% of applications received are not relevant. And if, let's say 20% of those have cover letters, that's a lot of reading that you're doing without any return for your time. So looking at the resume first to make sure, okay, this person has at least the minimum qualifications that I'm looking for. Then looking at the cover letter makes more sense from like a user journey perspective. So to write a successful cover letter, you don't want to rehash your resume because they've already glanced through it. What you want to do is talk about something that would make you seem like a nice person to work with. So you want to focus on your soft skills or your passion for the industry. If and how you structure the cover letter really depends on the field that you're going into. If you are going into a nonprofit, talking about the mission of the organization is probably going to be really important. If you are, not going into like a very mission-driven kind of job, if you're, let's say you're a software developer, like it doesn't matter, I mean, it might a little if you're going to be a software developer for a nonprofit. I mean, that can definitely be an interesting differentiator in your cover letter where you're like, I'm really passionate about irrigation, and I know I'll be working with the software side of things, but, safe, clean water for farmers is something I'm really, really passionate about. You can add that line in there, but it's not that much of a necessity. And I would encourage people to stop overthinking their cover letters, because by the time that cover letter is being opened, you've already made a decent first impression to encourage that. So a cover letter that's kind of like one size fits all is okay. A cover letter that takes less than 2 minutes to customize per job is okay. If you are only applying in the nonprofit sector and you have a variety of missions that you are passionate about, that's a different situation. But I'm assuming a vast majority of your readers that it doesn't apply to them. So have a cover letter that's decent, that talks about the biggest project you've worked on. Maybe it talks a little bit about that backstory of that project, about some of the budget constraints, some of the obstacles you ran into. What's there? What's not there on your resume that you can use to demonstrate your problem solving skills, your ability to identify opportunities in times of crisis, your ability to think quickly, your ability to lead a team and take a demoralized team and uplift them. Some of these softer things that don't show up in your resume, that's what you want to focus on your cover letter. And if you want like a really like foolproof way to write a cover letter, I actually do have a cover letter template on my website that you can go to. If you navigate to careertuners.com/podcast, you can grab it for free.
Oh, lovely. Everyone loves a freebie, don't they?
Yeah.
So I might have shown my age then with that question.
A little bit. Or your applicant tracking system is just garbage.
Well, yeah, didn't have one when I was doing it, so there we go.
Yeah.
It was my eyes. That was the applicant tracking system. Yeah. Although, come to think of it, it was usually the cover letter that I read second anyway, so even my own question didn't make any sense, did it? There we go.
You maybe glanced at it, but you're probably like, let me make sure this person is not like a complete, bad fit for the role. Because then when you read a cover letter, you're kind of making yourself a little vulnerable, and you're getting kind of emotionally attached to that person. Because what if they're sharing like their whole story? Like, you don't want to waste your time reading that nonsense if they're not qualified. Just kidding, a little bit.
So you're not saying that nobody reads it and it goes straight in the bin. Just so we're clear.
No, not at all. In fact, I did a bit of research to see how many people were reading cover letters, and it was like a significant number of employers that do. And the general gist of a cover letter is a really bad cover letter isn't going to completely detract from your candidacy. Like if you have a very generic, like, I am interested in the job, so please consider my candidacy, that's a pretty bad cover letter. It's not going to hurt your candidacy. Well, okay, when I say really bad, I mean like within the realm of normalcy. I don't mean stuff with like swear words and pornography, obviously. So, but a really good cover letter can take a mediocre candidate and really elevate them. So if, your resume is kind of meh, like, yeah, you've had some experience, but it's been like at small companies, or like you haven't really had that much to achieve in your career that you're bragging about in your resume. If in your cover letter, you're speaking to a pain point that is being experienced currently in your industry, you're getting the chance to elevate your candidacy. So for example, if let's say it's, I don't know, like 2016 and all these supply chain people are learning about, Amazon and how they're innovating with their supply chains and blah, blah, blah. And you talk about in your cover letter how you've studied that and how you can use their ERP system to kind of emulate some of the successes. That's a very good cover letter, and that would really elevate your candidacy, even if you're just like a new graduate, right? So that's the general advice that I would give you is, just spend like an hour on it. Don't overthink it. Don't spend more than 2 minutes customizing it per job. And that's how you can find the most success with a cover letter.
Good to know. What is the best thing about what you do?
My clients. I love my clients. I love the ones that are like as passionate about their work as I am. It might be something completely like I've never heard of it, but just, hearing about that, like I hear about stuff before it comes on the news. You know what I mean? It's just so much fun. So I love my clients. I love listening to their stories. And I love the feeling of gratification I get when they tell me like, hey, the pay that I was able to negotiate is $70,000 than what I was making last year. And that's something that actually happened to me last year. A client of mine wrote me like that. And another client, a lot of our clients have actually gone on to doubling their pays, and then they'll come back and then they'll get their update like two years later or whatever, and they'll get like a 15% increase on top of that. So that's very gratifying, just like from like a numbers perspective. We're like, yay, more money. But it's the stories really that move me. That's what I love doing. That's what sticks in my memory, after more than a decade of doing what I do.
So what's the best story then?
The best stories usually happen around, oh my God. Okay. So there was this client that I had, so sweet, such a sweet, sweet client. And it makes sense why he was so sweet, because I'll tell you, he had studied policy development in college and he had some experience in that, but he had taken a break from that world to help his wife run her cupcake shop. And he had been doing that for like 2 to 3 years. So when you looked at his resume, if you're like working at the White House or the UN, you're going to be like, cupcake shop, like what? And you're not going to really, consider him serious. But it was a very successful cupcake shop. Like, not only was that shop very successful, they managed to like raise enough to open a second location. And we were like, okay, we need to tell this story in a way that makes sense to people who work in diplomacy and like foreign policy and all of that. And we did. We really shone the light on his ability to draft policy and to do all of that first person, all of the things that are critical to someone hiring in that space. And he got a job with the UN, and he wrote us back. He was like, I have been waiting for this job for years. And it was just like that was the highlight of my career. It was just so great because he genuinely wanted to create policy that was like, that was helping the poorest people in the world. And I mean, who doesn't want to help a client like that, right? He's just a very, very sweet guy who's full of cupcakes. So
amazing. Yeah, that is a really good story. I agree with that. What's the biggest leadership lesson that you've learned in your career so far?
Always hire people that are smarter than you and get out of their way. Like, give them whatever like onboarding and training they need to become familiar with your processes and their other teammates and stuff, but let them have the creative space. And having creative space means not bogging them down with a huge workload. It means, helping them connect with their colleagues in a way that the flow of information is smooth. It means if it might require like one-on-one mentorship, and this has become very common among people who are hiring Gen Z employees, where they're not just looking for like technical training and on-the-job training, but they're looking for managers who can advise them on a more personal level. So I do work with some Gen Z employees, and this is definitely a trend that I personally have experienced. And then I went on to Harvard Business Review, and they were talking all about it. So you have to have that in this 2023 and beyond. Like, you have to have that ability to be able to help people assess what their skills are and tailor their job description to match what their innate strengths are, so that they can be their best selves, and that your team will also be more successful as a result. That's
interesting. Yeah. Gen Z, which one's that? That's the one that comes after millennials, isn't it?
Yeah, those are people that are like born in the year 2000. And it's like, you guys drink and vote? Really? Okay.
Yeah. I don't want to think about that too much.
No, but they're great. I really love my younger colleagues. They're so energetic and they have all these ideas, and they're very correct. Like, they're very politically correct, and they want to do the right thing. They're very mission driven. They want to help people. And like, they make me a better person. As corny as that sounds,
It doesn't sound that corny.
My boomer parents messed me up and made me materialistic and all of that. And these Gen Z people are fixing me. They're doing the reverse.
Yeah. I must say though, I don't envy anyone who had to grow up after the invention of social media. Like, that must have been tough. I couldn't have done that.
Yeah. The bullying and all of that. And, it's... Yeah. I feel for? I went to an alumni event recently at UCLA, and someone was like, oh yeah, I went to school and like we couldn't go to school because it was the pandemic. And I was like, what? You did not get your college experience properly. So that's tough. Oh my God, the sheer anxiety that the world felt. And then imagine being 18 and having to go through that. I thought that was really crazy.
Yeah. It made the news over here. There was a couple of particularly poorly handled ones at some of our universities here, where they were basically locking people in their dorms for a while. There's one poor student in inverted commas, depending on your politics, who had made the news. He was on the thing because he was holding up a thing, basically HMP, and then the name of the university, HMP being Her Majesty's Prison. And so, so it's a bit melodramatic, but it was.
I mean, if you're 18, you're going to be melodramatic.
Yeah, of course you are. Yeah, and you're a student, and you can't go anywhere because of lockdown, and you live in a one-bedroom dorm. Yeah, I can empathise, but yeah, that was one of the most enduring images of the pandemic in the UK.
For sure. I think another one is working parents who had babies during the pandemic, because now, like, I know a lot of moms who have children that were born in that age. They're like, yeah, my baby's a COVID baby. They're very shy. And I'm like, wow, how did you do that? Like, that must have been so tough for your child to go through that crazy developmental phase where they need to go to a park every day. They have all that energy and you're kind of stuffed into this tiny apartment. So, and then working while doing that, that's a crazy story of resilience if I ever heard one. So.
Yeah, 100%. Definitely. What is the best piece of leadership that you've ever seen?
I think the best piece of leadership, there was this woman that I worked with, and she was a chief people officer. So like HR, but at the executive level. And she did so many things for the hospital that she was working at. Like, she undertook this research project. It wasn't like one hospital. It was like this huge chain where she was like, why in general am I seeing that women and men have this, 24% pay gap in our workforce? So she did a lot of digging, and she worked with a lot of people to identify, after correcting for, obviously, men tend to be doctors and women tend to be nurses. Correcting for all of that, she was able to identify that the pay gap was only 8%. And then she was like, 8%, that's achievable. Like, I can close that. That makes sense. So she started directly talking to nurses and asking, like, why is your salary less? Like, what's going on? And apparently the way the shifts were structured, a lot of the nurses, the female nurses, could not sign up for overtime because they had childcare duties at home, and like daycares would close at a specific time. Or, if you want to have your child in there for longer, you have to pay some fees, like extra fees. Whereas the male nurses did not have that. So all she had to do was simply change the shift structures, and she was able to eliminate that pay gap. And I thought that was so smart. And it required a bunch of different characteristics of a good leader. First of all, asking questions, right? Because she could have been like, whatever, like, yeah, this is the reality. And yeah, men are doctors, women are nurses, whatever. I don't want to deal with it. She did that. She asked why, what is happening. Second thing she did is she looked at data. Being a leader means you really have to be good at math. And if you're not, surrounding yourself with analysts who can help you ask the right questions and get answers is so critical. The third thing she did is she went into, she did direct people management. She went into the hospitals and she talked to these nurses about what was going on. And it's, she got people to open up to her. And that's a big showcase of leadership. So she stayed informed decision-making, asking questions and continuing to ask why, how do we get there? And then third, making sure that she was actually managing hands-on. So she was really fun to work with. I thought that was a very cool project.
Yeah. And I'd add a fourth to that, which is she followed through and actually did address the problem.
Oh, true. She didn't just play.
Because there's a lot of leaders, that's it. Like, they'll get far enough and then it's like, oh, okay, I know the answer, but it's too difficult, so I'm going to give up now and go and do something else.
Yeah.
So the follow through is very important. So, I mean, that's an interesting one. And actually, from the point of view of the recruitment world, something I've heard with a few other guests in the past, and we do talk about kind of the equality differences in pay. And one of the things I've heard is that part of the cause for that is that men will be naturally much more likely to apply for something they're not qualified for and be fine with that and not really see it as a thing. Whereas women will be like, no, I don't meet the minimum criteria, I can't apply. Is that true? Do you see that?
This is based on science. Yeah, this is what actually happens. There has been studies that have proven that women do this. And to women out there who have done this, I'm just going to tell you one thing. It is not your job to decide if you are a good fit for their team. It is their job to decide, right? Why are you screening yourself out? They will screen you out if you're not a good fit. And second, when someone is writing a job description, it's like when we're little kids and we're like, okay, I have $5 in my piggy bank, but I want a dream house that has a slide going out the window and blah, blah. Like that's how job descriptions are sometimes written, because sometimes people that write job descriptions are like, you know, they're harried managers. They don't have the proper training to figure out like how to write a job description that really makes sense. They don't have the resources to really sit down and think about their business problems and how they want to boil that down into a job description. So you have these people that are writing job descriptions that may be doing a poor job of it, and they might be putting in all kinds of stuff in there with their tiny budget. That makes no sense. So you should not screen yourself out. You should apply. If you can find yourself checking off like 50% of the bullets in a job description, you should apply, because the rest you can learn on the job or with some, you know, independent training of your own or whatever it takes. But that's the reality of how men job search, and that's how you should too.
Yeah. And similar question around asking for pay rises as well, I guess. You know, again, I don't know if the research is there behind this, but what I've heard from a few people is that men feel entitled to more money, so they'll ask it on expectation of getting it, whereas women will feel, well, what do I need to do to earn that pay rise first? Is that
just
fair?
Exist because inflation is rampant.
Well, ignoring the ridiculous inflation, yeah. But,
oh man, yeah, just exist. That's enough.
Yeah.
That is true. Yeah, that is definitely true. Where women, you know, we feel like we have to earn something versus, you know, there is an expectation. And so how do you make it normal for yourself to have that expectation? Because that is a huge mindset shift that it can be really helpful for you in your career. You have to normalize high pay. And how you normalize high pay is surrounding yourself with people who have high pay. So who's doing the jobs that you'd like to do? Who's making the amount of money that you'd like to make? Normalize talking to them about their career, the projects that they're working on. These might be people in your specific company. These might be people in competitors' companies. Just being like Facebook friends with these people and chatting with them on a regular basis. Yeah, it's a lot of work. And I know as women, we have a huge portion of household and childcare duties. And we don't have as much flexibility with our schedules. But if you really want to, be compensated fairly, this is something that you have to do on your own as well. It's not fair, and it's a broken system, but it's going to take decades to fix it, while you can improve your own financial circumstances by just putting in like an hour a week.
And I think, yeah, from a management point of view, I mean, this obviously normally comes up when we're talking about leadership and hiring processes for kind of the senior roles. And for me, it's always been quite stark in that the differences between men and women managers. There's so many what I would call borderline incompetent male managers.
Oh no!
whereas there's far fewer women in those roles, but those that are usually way more competent. And so from my point of view, I'm thinking, well, I'd like to see more women managers for that reason, please, because they tend to be better. But anyway, yeah, so there we go.
Yes, please, we're better, so please ask for more.
I mean, there's stats about women-led companies, aren't there, and how they outperform male-led companies. Yet they also, I was talking about this with another guest a few weeks ago, and yet those women-led companies really struggle to raise funding.
I don't know. I'm really optimistic. Like, just, I don't know, maybe it's just because the specific clients that I work with are genuinely and actively trying to improve like pay equity and financial equity in whatever fields they are in through their, because it is something that you have to challenge from multiple disciplines. And I'm just seeing people kind of, pick at it. And I think there's going to be significant improvements, at least by the time our children are in the workplace.
Yeah, I hope so. And I think it can only be good for all involved, because you're going to end up with the better quality candidates, the better quality managers, the better run businesses, better performance, and that's good for the economy as a whole, isn't it? So there we go. There's the logic. Now we need is everyone to see it that way. We'll get there. We'll get there. I'm optimistic too. So changing tack a little bit, what was the worst piece of leadership you've ever seen?
Well, I don't want to challenge like any of my clients, because when you make a mistake in leadership, like, it's fixable. Like, I had this colleague who would often say to me, like, stupidity is curable, And I really love that, because if you've made a stupid mistake at work, it's probably not the end of the world. You can, there's solutions for everything. So let's share my own personal, like, worst leadership mistake that I've made. This guy, the one that says stupidity is curable, he was so bright and I didn't promote him in time. I was so busy with some other projects, and he was like, I would like to do something more customer facing. He's one of my operations assistants. And I was like, okay, yeah, for sure. We'll think about it. And I was putting out fires everywhere, as opposed to really being like, okay, let me innovate and give people more creative freedom. So that was the worst leadership mistake that I've made, where I was so consumed by my own fires that I was not, looking back, like, those, what seemed like urgent fires really were not. And it was just a form of me procrastinating, because I didn't want to, do the extra work of promoting someone to a brand new role and creating all of that onboarding material and training and everything. So it was a form of roundabout procrastination, where I was doing stuff that was familiar, even though it was very stressful, just for the sake of escaping something that would be new. So this is a mistake that I made very early in my career. And now I actually teach managers how to not do that, like how to stop with this stressful and toxic procrastination by filling up your calendar with all of these firefighting duties and tasks that you should really be delegating or resolving in a more systemic way, so that you have the creative time to really innovate and ask the big questions. Like I was saying, that client did, is like, why is there this pay gap? What do we need to correct for? How do we go about tackling this? Those are the big questions that, depending on your line of work, you could be asking as well, so that you're working on the big, high visibility projects that get executive attention, that position you for executive positions, right? So please learn from my mistake and do not firefight. There's some resources on Harvard Business Review that kind of talk about firefighting specifically, and what you need to do in order to kind of stop doing that. And I think going back to that question of like women versus men, I do feel that women do firefight. With my experience working with female managers versus male managers, I have found that female managers have been like, okay, this needs to be perfect, so I will handle it. And like, they don't they want to achieve 100% perfection, as opposed to being like, you know what, this is 80% perfect. I am okay with the risk of this blowing up in my face 20% of the time, which doesn't happen. Like, things don't blow up in your face if you've done 80% of the work. So please, have a moment of reflection if this is something that's bothering you, because this is the kind of stress that causes health problems. You know what I mean? You just keep taking on these familiar and very stressful duties, so that you're not fulfilling yourself. So please take a minute to reflect on that.
That's very interesting that you said that women managers do that more.
My experience, that isn't like backed by any study. This is just my personal experience that I found.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I think both do it, maybe for different reasons though. I think a lot of male managers will do this. I mean, I call it the plate spinning. You've got to keep all the plate spinning. You can't let anyone slow down or drop. But it's certainly in my experience, the men managers do that more as a procrastination, like you said to start with, less about because they want every single thing to be perfect, more because if I focus on all of these things, then I don't have to think about that really difficult thing over there that's stressing me out.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it doesn't even have to be like that stressful. It's just about our like comfort levels because and here's a piece of advice that I would like to give managers. If you find yourself in an uncomfortable situation, like you have to do something from scratch for the first time, or it's a brand new thing for you, think about all the times when you learned something from scratch, when there was like a decent chance of failure, but you succeeded. Like you have to keep revisiting your successes because there have been times when you could have messed things up or fumbled and you didn't. And being aware of that rather than focusing on everything that can go wrong with your new project will help you maintain your confidence so that you can correct for all of the things that can potentially go wrong.
But also, if it does go wrong, if you do drop one of those spinning plates, it's not the end of the world. There's something to learn there, isn't there? So next time you'll do it differently, you'll do it better.
Yeah. So this is a problem with younger managers. I read a study with like younger managers, with older managers and older professionals in general. Like if they have a failure, they'll learn from it. They'll be like, oh, okay, this is another data point that I need in order to improve my decision making. Versus with younger professionals, if they have a failure, they don't really have much to contextualize that, okay, this is just a data point in the grand scheme of things. So it tends to hamper their productivity. But even as a young professional, there have been times in your life when you had to do something for the first time and it was scary and you did okay. It might have taken a lot of learning and picking yourself up, but you did that. That's why you're alive. It's the nature of being a human being. So think about that. It might not be work related. It might be something related to learning a new language or learning how to dance or giving a performance or a speech or something else that really challenged, your ability to be your best self, but you did it anyway. So focus on that and use that to, when you have a failure, understand it is just a data point. It's not reflective of your capabilities. It might be reflective of, the shape of your industry or where we are in terms of like the economic climate, but it's probably not you. Unless you're posting wrong answers for math questions on LinkedIn, it's probably not you.
Yeah, or really bad political propaganda or something. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, but good advice for the job search as well and the interview process. Absolutely. Yeah. If you were to start your business again from scratch, what, if anything, would you do differently?
I think that's a really great question and one I think about constantly because it helps. Because, we're like, oh man, if only I could have done this, I could have, achieved X, Y, and Z by now. But I think it's a little unhealthy to obsess over it as much as I had been in the past because I'm not like 80. Like I have a lot of years of experience left to give. I have a lot of work left to do. So just revisiting that question to be like, okay, this is what I'm going to do differently now is I think healthier. But if I was to, I would definitely be promoting people sooner, empowering them more. It would be exploring the intersection of AI and career development sooner, which is something that I just started doing. And it's so interesting. I actually just published 2 blogs on ChatGPT and how you can use it to prepare yourself for interviews and also to write your resume from scratch. So you can check those out on my blog. That was a really fun experiment. And I'm so hopeful that AI is going to help empower more young professionals to basically get the information that they need to market themselves properly.
Interesting. And you're not afraid of the AI putting you out of a job?
Initially, I was. So that's actually the first line of my blog where I was like, oh, this thing's going to take my job away. But as I kept exploring it, I found that there were very specific mistakes that it makes around what recruiters would call red flags in a candidate's history. So employment gaps, career transitions, what else? Like if you have entrepreneurial experience in the past, the resume that ChatGPT puts together for you, it's not really going to address those in a strategic manner. Additionally, you have to give your story to ChatGPT for it to spit something back out. And if you just don't have, like, if you're going through some sort of transition where you don't know how to contextualize what you've done to a new industry, ChatGPT can help a little bit with that, but it's not going to be super creative for you. Like, you do need the help of a coach to be like, well, let's dig into this project a bit more. I think there's more to it. And it won't be able to kind of dig through to really get your best stories out of you. I did create some prompts that I think do a decent enough job. If you're a fairly traditional candidate, you just need a little bit of help kind of refining some points of your story. But the interview advice that it gave was quite mediocre. There were some things it did really well. Like, it did a really great job generating interview questions from a job description. It did a really great job generating kind of general behavioral interview questions. It did a great job of creating sample answers. But when I was like, here's my resume and can you help me prepare an answer to this question, I feel like the answers it came up with were good, but they were really very braggy and didn't really focus enough on like the collective wins, which are so critical to convey in an interview, because you don't just want to be like, I'm so great and I have done this and I have done that, because you want to come across as someone that's easy to work with too. So I really like ChatGPT. I think it has so much potential. However, the information that's fed into it, some of it is outdated, some of it is no longer relevant. So the advice it can give you can even be harmful. So if you are interested in, using ChatGPT, please check out my blogs first. Like, I don't want you to do something that's going to kind of highlight your red flags and, paint your experience in a way that's less than strategic. So do check that out. And hopefully, in the future, even those bugs get kind of ironed out, or at the very least, we can develop tools that kind of correct for these issues. But people will always need coaches. People will always need someone to kind of talk through and help them understand what parts of their candidacy are really good, and maybe parts that aren't very strategic to talk about. And ChatGPT cannot do that. It cannot check for things like culture fit. It cannot check for things like how you're presenting your soft skills. It's trying, but it's a pale substitute for someone who coaches people on getting their dream jobs. But if you're a young professional and you don't have much experience, or you're a very traditional, kind of, I have had a very linear career growth, I think it could be a phenomenal tool for you.
I guess it's not an average, is it? But it can only produce answers within the training data that it's been given, right? The way these
exactly,
they're not really. I mean, we call it AI. It's not really AI, is it? It's just an algorithm.
Yeah, it's just a language model. And people are so different. Like, your career path might have something that mine doesn't, and how you talk about it's going to be so different from me. And it's not going to know to ask those questions like, hey, did you have to take leave for, X, Y, and Z reason? Well, here's how we want to talk about it. In fact, the way it talks about leaves was really damaging. Like, I told it, hey, ChatGPT, what if I had to take a year off due to a depressive episode, which is common? Like, people have had to take time off for depressive episodes. How do I talk about this in my resume? How do I talk about this in an interview? And it was just like, just announce it in your cover. Like, no, ChatGPT, that's not what you're supposed to do, like, at all. This is bad robot. So it's, and what you say about these things in like the financial sector is going to be totally different from how you talk about this experience in like the medical device field. Like, it's just it does not take any of that nuance into account, and that nuance is what gets you hired.
Yeah, it's the human clues, isn't it? Picking up on the subtle elements of language and the context and all that sort of stuff. And I think that's why most jobs are probably safe from AI for the foreseeable future, to be honest.
Yeah, I think the only jobs that are getting automated are very, very kind of data entry, or very, very kind of people that do the most rudimentary work that aren't really that skilled to begin with.
Yeah.
Funny. I talked to an accountant who not started, but like they were a young professional at the time that Excel came out. And accountants at the time were like, oh my God, this is going to take all of our jobs. And I was like, well, what's your take on that? Now ChatGPT is here, it's producing content. What's your take on it taking all of the content producers' jobs? And he was like, I'm not too worried, because even with Excel, like, the thing that made me a good accountant is that I was looking at the numbers and finding nuance for decision making, which Excel couldn't do. Like, it could add things up and, pull out averages and kind of visualize data beautifully, but it didn't help you decide what to do based on that. And that's what clients are hiring me for, to make those recommendations. Even like a really sophisticated tax algorithm cannot do that. Like, it cannot make those recommendations for you that, are based on decades of experience and all of that. So he was like, look, if my job has been safe after the advent of Excel, like, most content producers, like, their jobs are going to be safe. It's going to help you and make your jobs faster, but it's not going to take them away.
Yeah, it's the interpretation and insight, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I've talked about this with a few AI experts, or machine learning, as they call it. Apparently that's what it's supposed to be called. And I mean, there's a couple of examples that always stand out to me. One on kind of the similar to ChatGPT. It's the one, I think it was Microsoft, wasn't it, a few years back, where they had the Twitter bot, and within like the bot on Twitter,
the Twitter bot, yeah.
And so within,
horrible, and it was
it was within hours as well. Just all of the input data was basically Twitter, and within hours it was basically spouting Nazi propaganda. And you're like, so that is a pretty clear demonstration, right, that it's only ever going to be as good as the data that goes into it and what it's trained with. So, if you're putting in a whole load of, for this example, mediocre CVs and mediocre interview questions, and that's all it's ever going to be able to produce. It can't see between the gaps, I suppose, is the best way of calling it. And then the other example I always like was the one of the former colleague who was quite good at this applying the machine learning to imagery analysis. And so his example was the candle in the night that's a mile away. So the human eye can look at that, detect it, and immediately know what it is, because we have the insight and the knowledge and the general intelligence to be able to basically do that, to figure it out, to know what it is without really thinking about it. Whereas a machine learning or AI algorithm couldn't do that.
What does it say it is, out of curiosity?
It potentially wouldn't even detect it to start with, because it's such a small speck of light.
Oh, okay.
And if it did, it might think it was a star, say. Because that's the majority of that kind of light source of that size that it is seen on the training data it's been given. And it's anyway, I don't know how that one stands up, because that was about 10 years ago I had that conversation. But anyway. But it's interesting, it's the difference between specific trained algorithms versus general intelligence. And that was, as it's been explained to be, my former guest, actually, as well on this podcast. That's where the gap is at the moment. But anyway, I love all that stuff. It's really interesting.
It is very interesting. It's very fascinating. And, I think this can help a lot of people. Definitely. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They're definitely useful tools, very much so, as long as you understand the limitations and what it can and can't do. And then keep your expectations at that appropriate level.
I think really, like, the way to make ChatGPT more accessible is for smart people in their respective fields, not just ChatGPT, but other tools like it, for them to create kind of like guidelines and best practices that are accessible by anyone. And then I think, learning will really get democratized, and all of this information will truly be accessible and utilizable. Utilable?
No, I know what you mean, though. And I think you're right, definitely. Yeah. As long as there's enough people out there who are confident enough of their skills that they're willing to put that knowledge out there without worrying about their livelihoods.
Yeah.
Leadership Heroes.
I've only got one question left.
Okay.
And this is the question that everyone gets asked without modification, because I like to hear all the different answers. And it is a difficult one, but I'm not sorry. So I call it Leadership Heroes. And so the question is, if you had to pick one person, and they can be alive or dead, past, present, real, fictitious, who in your opinion would perfectly embody leadership, who would that be and why?
Okay, so this is going to sound stupid, but hear me out. The 1995 Disney movie Tarzan, I feel, is the perfect embodiment of leadership. Because think about it. He's in a brand new situation where he has to learn a whole bunch of languages. He has to figure out how to use the resources available to him to create the best possible tools. He has to win the trust of all of these different people that are uniquely biased against him, but he does it anyway, and he leads them into a better world. So Tarzan from Disney is the perfect leader.
Interesting. I haven't actually seen it.
You haven't?
So I can't. Yeah, it's very difficult for me to comment.
In my unprofessional opinion, it is the best animated movie of all time due to that story. And additionally, I mean, there's so many great things about it. The soundtrack is one of the best. There's a strong female scientist in there whose dad encourages her to, kind of explore and do whatever she wants. Like there's nothing problematic about it as far as I have seen, and I have watched it very recently, and I'm proud to admit this. I watch it like every year.
Not even his dress sense? Is that not slightly problematic?
Oh yeah, that is true, huh? He's not wearing he does wear a suit and tie in one scene. Like, so he knows how to clean up for like the professional. There you go. Another lesson from Tarzan, the greatest movie of all time.
Amazing. Well, it's fair to say that I've not had that one before, so well done.
Thank you.
Points for originality, definitely.
Of course. I highly recommend watching the making of the Tarzan. There's a lot of discussions of that because they innovated on some very specific animation styles. 1995 and the early 2000s, they were really doing a lot with animation, and it's just so interesting to learn about that. So if that's something that you'd like to learn about.
Okay, well, I might give it a go. I mean, we've got Disney Plus, mostly for Star Wars, if I'm honest. But it's probably on there, isn't it? So, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Might give it a go. Give it a go. Leadership lessons from Disney. There we go. What a lovely place to end the interview as well. Excellent. I will ask you one more thing, and that's just give everyone the opportunity, if you want to point the listeners to your website, if they want to learn more about you, or if they want help with some career guidance or CV writing.
So as I mentioned, throughout the podcast, I do a lot of research, and I try to put out free resources that help as many people as possible. I have put together a resume cheat sheet that has been downloaded by more than 150,000 people to date. There's also a salary negotiation set of email templates that you can grab, one of which helped one of my clients improve his overall pay by $70,000 per year last year. And I mean, throughout my career, I've helped a lot of people get into very prestigious companies, FAANG companies, Big Four, big major and highly competitive government organizations like the UN, the White House. I've helped MBA candidates get admission into the Stanford MSX program, MIT Sloan, and Harvard Business School. So everything that I do, everything that I've done for my clients, I have boiled down into a set of best practices that you can grab at careertuners.com/podcasts. And they're not detailed guides. They're just 2-page, quick, applicable things that it will take you just 2 minutes to apply to your job search, and you will see dramatic improvements. For example, I have my interview cheat sheet in which I break down the 7 questions that I feel like almost everybody messes up, and the exact frameworks that you need to use instead in order to really shine a big giant spotlight on your best strengths and how they can help the company that you're interviewing with achieve what they want to do. So you can grab those at careertuners.com/podcasts. That's careertuners.com.
Excellent. Thank you. And that's actually reminded me as well. So some of the off-the-wall kind of weird interview questions that you hear about, I don't know how much they come up in real life, but what's the perfect answer to the question, if you were a flavour of ice cream, what flavour would you be?
I don't know if it's I do know. It's considered not good to ask these kinds of questions anymore because it's there's nothing but a giant ego trip on the part of the interviewer. Like, why are you making people do a song and dance? So in that case, I would just go with my favorite flavor and say, I hope this is what you guys are serving in the cafeteria when I start here.
Yeah, I guess that's all you can do, really, isn't it? Because you're right, it's such a stupid question.
It's a stupid question. I mean, there are questions that are designed to like test your mental prowess. Like, how many crows are in the city of Los Angeles right now? Like I can understand why you would ask that, but there are so many better ways to test candidates on their ability to think quickly. We are not grilled interview questions like this on our day-to-day jobs. We have access to ChatGPT and Google and all of the other things that make our jobs faster and easier. So if you're an employer, please don't do that. And if you're going for interviews, try to just answer with a smile and just show your work, basically. Okay, I assume there's going to be around 7 million crows, and if there's more, it's probably due to a migration. Like just try to answer that as logically. Don't show that you're phased. They're trying to see how well you're doing under pressure in the face of a really random or stupid question. Don't be afraid to have a little bit of fun. Like, not saying that the question you asked me about Tarzan was stupid, but that was like a fun answer, right? So similarly, you can, if you get asked a question like, which cartoon character do you most admire? Please copy and paste my Tarzan answer. I want more people to be aware of the beauty of this Disney movie. So don't be afraid to just have a little fun and answer the question the way you would answer it if your spouse was being annoying and asking those stupid questions that our spouses tend to do. And by spouse, I mean me. I'm the one asking my spouse. So.
Snap. Yeah. Amazing. Well, I'm glad I got that in there, because that might be entertaining or helpful for somebody. Well, that's it, and we're miles out of time. So thanks for staying a bit later than planned. Much appreciated.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you again to Fatima for her time today. It was quite a long one, actually, so we obviously were enjoying our conversation, and I hope you've all found it helpful, listeners. Regardless of which side of the interview table you tend to sit on, there were some really useful tips and advice there on how to make it a better process for all involved, really. If you would like to learn more, I've put the website details in the episode description, so you can find the blog and all of those free resources from the Career Tuners website. So I do encourage you to give those a look, give them a download, and I'm sure they'll be helpful. If you would like to learn more about leadership, if perhaps you feel like it's one of those soft skills that would help you in your job search, if that's relevant to you right now, or if it would help you to meet the requirements of that next role, that next job that you want, the next step on your career journey, if you will, then please do reach out to me as well. We'd be very happy to discuss Leading with Integrity process and our approach to leadership and how it might be able to benefit you in your career. Again, the website details are in the description, but if you go to www.leadernotaboss.co.uk/sign up, you can sign up for the mailing list and you'll get a whole load of free stuff will appear in your inbox over the course of a few weeks. Or you can hit the contact button and reach out to me directly. Or if you prefer, you can also find me on LinkedIn. Again, the link is in the episode description. And that's enough from me. Thank you so much for listening all the way through this one. I hope you found it helpful and maybe even entertaining. Preferably both, really, but there we go. Join me again next time. We're going to have another excellent guest. And in the meantime, remember, be a leader, not a boss.